Welcome, everyone, to Master B2B. This is a webcast, and today we're talking about the state of B2B e-commerce. My name is Brian Beck. I'm here with Andy Hoar, my partner at Master B2B. For those of you who don't know what Master B2B is, it is a worldwide community of B2B e-commerce professionals at manufacturers and distributors, and we do quite a bit of thought leadership as well. And for those of you who don't know Andy, the 2 or 3 people out there, Andy is a longtime industry veteran, 7 years at Forrester Research, running their B2B e-commerce practice. He's the CEO of Paradigm B2B, where they do some great research about e-commerce platforms and other solutions. And my partner, of course, at Master B2B. Andy, good to be here with you.
Yeah, good to be with you as well. And we did this last year, and it was fascinating. We have some new insights to share this year as well. So looking forward to it. But for those of you who don't know Brian, so Brian's been kind of every position you could have on the field when it comes to B2B commerce. He's been a consultant. He was a guidance for a while. He's been an author. He wrote a book called $1 Billion B2B e-commerce. He was a practitioner on the B2B side, working for Harbor Freight Tools, running the e-commerce group there. He's also at PacSun on the B2C side. So he's been B2C and B2B.
Yep.
And again, as Brian mentioned, we're partners on the Master B2B community. And Brian, it's great to be here with you again.
Yeah, no, this is going to be a great episode, Andy. Excited. And by the way, for those who are wondering, I don't have my sign today. I don't have my Master B2B sign. I'm sitting in Las Vegas at a conference in the middle of the summer here. It's a nice and toasty, warm 111 degrees outside. So yes, I'm here in the Venetian. It's a nice hotel. But
you're
anyway.
at a conference. Is that what you said, Brian?
Yes, I'm at a
call it these days.
Well, a trade show.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
A trade show? That's what they call it these days in Vegas when people go there?
Yeah. No, it's all good. It's all good. And there's some good food here. I won't deny that. So, well, folks, just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started here. This is a webcast. We're going to be asking a few questions just for research purposes as we go through our webcast today. So as you see those questions pop up, go ahead and answer them. That they'll just kind of float in and out during the course of our session today. And we're going to be joined by a lot of folks. And so if you have questions, go ahead and post them into the Q&A box. We'll get to as many of those as we can. And finally, this is being recorded. So we will make a copy of this available to folks so you can look at it on demand, share with all your friends and family. So today we're talking about our second annual State of B2B e-commerce. We previewed this, Andy, a few weeks ago on our Friday 15 podcast. But what a great session this is. We've had some really great folks come alongside us. We have some of those folks today on the webcast that are sponsoring this for us. So let's go ahead and get into our slides. So Coveo, Optimizely, and SAP have all partnered with us, and thank you. And we're going to hear from some of their senior people in just a few minutes as we go through this webcast. So, Andy, this is a second time through, and this is no longer about whether to do e-commerce, but this year it's about how. Specifically, how to do this competitively, cost effectively, and some really interesting themes emerged in our research this year. And we previewed this, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, but today we have even more data that we're going to be sharing. So why don't we talk a little bit about the methodology we used here, Andy?
Yeah, that was well said, by the way. It's not about whether to do e-commerce and B2B. It's about how to do it. And
right.
Within that how, there's a lot of variability. Some companies can do certain things. Some companies can do other things. That's one of the insights that we're going to talk about here a little bit later. But just quickly about the research methodology, the boring boilerplate stuff. But we want people to know how we approach this. We didn't just talk to a few people, throw some stats together, and call it a day. This is pretty rigorous research. We pride ourselves in the quality of the work we do here. So we literally did dozens of in-depth interviews. I'm talking 30 to 45-minute interviews with senior people in the community. Mm-hmm. We also did not one, but 2 surveys, one on the buy side and one on the sell side. So the sell side are the folks who are selling things through their e-commerce sites in B2B. On the buy side, it's the people who are buying. And we think to really get a state of the industry and to get some insights, you have to understand both groups because they both have different vantage points here. So over 100 people on each side. We conducted that research a couple of months ago. We talked to both manufacturers and distributors in both the US and Canada. And then lastly, what we talked about with the buyers is really about their buying behavior, their preferences, how they think about where they're going, where they do research, all phases of the customer journey, from the beginning part to even post-sale environment. So, and then on the sell side, we're talking to them about where they're seeing their digital investments, what kind of results they're getting, and importantly, what are their plans going forward? So we consider this a pretty comprehensive view of the space.
Yeah, no question, and some really interesting, insights. And a lot of those folks, by the way, I didn't mention it before. We're going to talk about these 8 insights in just a second. A lot of these folks are joining us today, by the way, Andy. I failed to mention it, but we've got some great folks on the line interested in this. I see Imran Shahdad from Zern is here. Sean Omar from Agid Glove is here. We've got representatives from Keysight and Toyota and Tyson Foods and Constellation Brands. Some of those folks and the companies I just mentioned are some of the people we interviewed for this, but then just, the industry in general is turning out to hear. So why don't we walk through some of these insights, Andy?
Well, naturally, the insights fall into certain categories. And so we've grouped them into 3 kind of key categories.
Right.
And so on the next slide, you'll see that the first 3 fall into this category of the buyer experience. What we say is the buyer experience drives everything. It seems sort of intuitive just to say that, but sometimes we have to remind people that at the end of the day, this is really about what buyers want, and the experience is what separates them. So what we've seen, not surprisingly, but worth mentioning again, is that expectations keep rising. Amazon keeps raising the bar, C number 1.
Yep.
And then in this category, the last thing is really that customers don't care about channel conflict. We talk about this all the time. Companies care about channel conflict, and I'm not trying to diminish its presence or in any way say it's not important. But at the end of the day, customers don't care about it. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to go buy in this channel today. They just don't. They say, I'm going to buy from this company, I'm going to buy this product, and they have an experience. So again, when it comes to comparing the 2 sides of the equation, we often hear the sell side talk about conflict in channels and selling on Amazon and what we do, that, pricing, et cetera. But we never hear any of that from the buyers. None of them ever say, yeah, I was comparing the pricing for this customer across nobody cares about that. So always worth remembering. So what are the second set of categories, Brian?
Yeah, so technology, right? So it's, this again feels like a little bit like motherhood and apple pie, but technology is critical to an improved experience. I lived this and as a VP of eCommerce for 17 years, Andy. Things like the core tech needs to support growth. And what does that mean? I mean, that's a again, a kind of a general statement, but we'll get into what does that mean now, right? What are the kinds of things that are required from a flexibility standpoint to be responsive to those buyers' needs? And then, this ongoing site search versus Gen AI, and where are we? And we're gonna have an industry expert coming in, Sheerine, to talk about that. So I'm excited for that topic. And then our third bucket has to do with the economic reality, right? So Andy, you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I mean, what's old is new. Profitability and customer retention matter. I mean, they've always mattered, but in the digital space, it's become more pronounced. And we're going to actually talk about this particular insight with somebody from SAP in a moment. Cross-channel metrics matter. Again, they've never stopped mattering, but it's one of the things where digital always struggles because companies, especially the C-suite, wants to define every P&L as different, right? And it doesn't work that way. We're going to talk about how online affects offline and offline affects online. And there's very clear research about this. The one that's interesting is people get that online affects offline. But what they still don't seem to understand, although the research has been very clear on this, is that offline actually affects online. When you open up a branch in a locale, what we've seen consistently is that the online sales in that geography actually go up. Directly attributable to the fact that there's an offline presence. So these do cross-modify one another, but when you're looking at everything as a separate channel and you say, well, the offline has its own P&L and the online has its own P&L, that's just not the way it works because customers don't work that way. And then lastly here, always a fan favorite about salespeople. I can't talk about the state of B2B commerce without talking about salespeople. Right. But my latest take on this is that they never left, but the role has definitely changed. So we'll get into that one here in a moment as well.
So not the death of the B2B salesman. All right, Andy. Your research at Forrester from 8 years ago or whatever. All right. So let's introduce just kind of who's going to be joining us. So Josh Schoonmaker, VP of Product at Optimizely. We have Sheerine Reid, Director of Product Marketing at Coveo. Chris Beeson, Director of Digital E-commerce at Bunzl. And then Imran Shahdad. I think I said that right, Imran. Hopefully I did. Global VP, SAP Commerce Cloud. And so we're going to have those folks join us as we go through our discussion today. But let's frame it up a little bit, Andy. Let's talk about some key stats from the report. And why don't you walk us through these?
Yeah, we're going to choose about 5 or 6 here and try to make them as interesting as possible because graphs and charts are not a whole lot of fun, but stick with us and kind of bear with us on the insights. So number one is that 83% of B2B organizations plan to spend more money on digital in 2024. Maybe not a huge surprise, except the number was pretty high. I must admit, we were surprised that it was this high, especially given the fact that the macro economy seems to be a bit in flux right now. Right. We're over sort of what happened with the pandemic, where there was tremendous investment that took place, and sometimes you get a hangover from that. But despite that, we don't see a slowdown here. We see that it continues to increase apace. That was from the sell side survey, and the rest of these insights are really from the buy side of the survey, because that's really what's driving B2B e-commerce. So the first one, again, a bit of an eye chart here, but what are B2B buyers doing today? And what we want to do is lift out 3 interesting insights. One is 69% they're going to buy more online. Right. Again, probably not a huge surprise that people are buying more online, but still 70% are buying even more online. So this is why B2B e-commerce is such a big deal, because there's more of it. Right. More using ratings and reviews. I remember, back in the day, all these B2B companies were reluctant to use ratings and reviews. You remember that? Like, oh, we don't want any negative stuff out there. And it's like, well, first of all, it's out there. Second of all, research has shown that when you have a mixture of good and bad, obviously more good than bad, it actually helps your credibility. The worst thing you can do is have all good, even if it's true, because nobody will believe it. And then, of course, nobody wants all bad. But it's kind of settled into the zeitgeist of the buyer in B2B, just like it did in B2C, that there's good and bad about everything, and they want to see this voraciously. Look, 80%. And the only thing this is all topped by, and we just feel like we have to bring this up again because the debate persists. It does. That's why I put it in highlight. 86% of B2B buyers said they want to research prices online. Let me repeat that. Yeah. Nearly 90% of B2B buyers are researching prices online. Why is this controversial? Right. Well, because we still talk to, I know I do, I'm sure you do as well, Brian. Yeah. We still talk to B2B companies that don't want to show pricing online. Yes. Yeah, so you're not meeting the B2B buyer's needs if you don't have ratings or reviews. You're not showing prices online. You're likely to lose lose some of those customers. I mean, I talked in my book, Andy, a couple of years ago about the age of transparency. That is really here. I mean, this is saying that the buyer wants transparency. They've had it in consumer for a long time now, and B2B companies just have to pay attention to this. So let's keep going. So what is this one? This one was really interesting. But go ahead. This is about eliminating friction. Well, I mean, this seems kind of stands to reason too, but it's worth noting that in a series of a long list of possibilities, that the number one reason about why people buy online and they're shifting their buying online is because it's a faster process. I mean, I bought things on Amazon in 4 seconds. I've never bought anything at a store in 4 seconds. So, yeah. Say no more. Next slide. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And where is research starting? Well, once again, we continue to see this. And I think a lot of the B2B companies don't believe this, especially the distributors don't like to hear this. But I've done this research, and now you and I have done this research for years. And it's very consistent that when asked, they prefer to start their research on a brand manufacturer's website. Yep. Second now is Amazon. These are in a different order, but you can see 19% said Amazon. And then coming in third is industry distributors. Now, I have to have the standard caveat here. It depends on the product, depends on the buyer scenario, depends on who the buyer is. There's a lot of dependencies here, but in general, number one is brand manufacturer. Number two is Amazon. We know why it's number one is brand, because there's a halo effect associated with the brand. You presume that they have the best information about the product that they manufacture. Now, that's not always the case. Yeah. But, if Sony makes a TV,
Right.
Well, 3M makes a respirator, you figure they're going to be the ones who know the most about it. So you probably want to learn, you can learn the most there. And then Amazon, plain and simple. The buyer experience is industry, standard setting.
Mm-hmm.
And they have just tremendous selection, and it's a one-stop shop, and there's a lot to be said for that. This is where industry distributors struggle because Amazon is basically just a mega distributor.
Well, I was really surprised to see this as the research place for Amazon. This isn't buying here; this is research. So people going to Amazon and using it as a search engine, and I think this is reflective of the change in generations. And Gen Z and millennials now being in the buying seat. So okay, well, great. So and why is Amazon beating distribution? Let's go ahead to the next slide. This is another fascinating one, Andy.
Just said it literally easiest to use, meaning least amount of friction.
Yep.
And the broadest selection. They don't have the best customer support. They don't have the most information about products. Let's be honest. But speed wins here.
Yeah.
And for the distributors, speed kills. And so this is really the discussion they have to be having is how do we remove friction from the process, which is actually one of the things we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, central thesis in my book is remove friction from the process and make the buyer's job easier, right? And that's how you win. But we would be remiss, Andy, without going through this data. We have one more piece of data to share here. If we didn't talk about AI, what about AI? Check out this stat, 45%, right? Andy said, how likely would you be used generative AI answering functionality on a B2B website in order to find information? Very likely, right? What does this say? What does this tell us?
It says times have changed. I mean, I'm pretty sure this would have been close to zero as recently as 2-3 years ago, and it's moved up the chain. Now, the thing is, we're now starting to see reality set in. Like we said, as one of our categories, hey, Gen AI isn't all it's cracked up to be in every circumstance. It's an amazing technology, and I think the promise here is off the charts. But, once we start to see things, especially in B2B, where, it's kind of like, it's zero fail mission for a lot of these things. You can't have an amazing video that's just wrong. Whereas in B2C, maybe you can, right? Because it's an amazing video. So we're going to see this one settle in. But I have seen, and I'm sure you have seen this too, B2B companies have definitely gotten on board with Gen AI, perhaps even too much so, but they've gotten on board with it like everybody else has.
Well, yeah, no, and we're going to walk. So we have all this data, and then what we did was we boiled it down to these insights. So we're going to talk through one at a time here. And the first one we is really about the need for profitability. So we want to bring in Imran Shahdad, and he's the global vice president, SAP Commerce Cloud. Imran, welcome. Hopefully you're going to show up on our screen here. There you are. Okay, got you. Imran, welcome. We want to talk with you about this first, key point here, which is the need for profitability, shifting focus towards customer retention. Imran, welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be
here. And we want to pick your brain on this stuff. You've been at SAP and around this industry for quite some time, and excited to have you here as a subject matter expert on this topic. So we'll just fire away with some questions. The first question, you and I had a chat about this a few days ago. We talk about the economy, right, being kind of in the state of flux in the sense that, there's some conservatism going on amongst, and we saw this emerge in our survey as we just described. In light of that, what are you seeing? Are your customers doubling down on digital investments like we saw earlier? And if so, what are they focusing on?
Very similar observations. So SAP has been observing a significant trend among its customers towards accelerating digital transformation efforts, especially in response to the economic shifts and disruptions. Mm-hmm. Many of our SAP customers are indeed doubling down on their digital investments. This trend especially has been fueled by the need to be agile, efficient, and resilient in current uncertain economic times. What we have also observed is the focus not only on the top line, but the bottom line, growth, consistent customer experience, as well as the digital innovation.
And you and I talked about some of the efficiencies, right, that you've seen companies invest in. So it's not as much about sort of the front end digital experience. I mean, it's about that clearly, but at the end of the day, investments companies are making are particularly around post-purchase and other non-front-end commerce efforts, even tied into, I know you guys are one of the world's leading ERP systems too, right? So what specific things are you seeing getting invested in there? What kinds of things on the efficiency side?
The way the B2B buyers and the B2B customers of ours are looking at our commerce solution is in a slightly different context than the traditional commerce platform. Our Commerce Cloud solution enables our businesses to connect business processes to foster the top line and bottom line growth, as I mentioned in the earlier question.
Yep.
But what's critical in the center of that it connects the supply chain and the demand signals in the ERP across the value chain for that particular transaction. And one of the ways beyond the catalog, beyond the order taking and the transaction aspect, is the focus on the post-transaction activities. So from an end buyer perspective, having an ability to see multiple order types, not just the web orders that we placed, but what about the EDI orders or other channel orders that are out there should be visible in as a self-service portal within the commerce solutions. So use cases like exposing the invoices, having the ability to make payments against those invoices, triggering a quotation if they want to negotiate a price from a B2B context perspective. So all those unique capabilities with a one-stop shop approach, leveraging our Commerce Cloud solutions, is what we are seeing from a customer's perspective, again, with the key focus on that bottom line growth as well.
So we're seeing companies, thank you for that. We're seeing companies, really with all this cross-channel, unifying the cross-channel, experience, companies looking to use that to deepen their loyalty, right? So get more out of the customers they have. And as you think about that, how does that sort of creating a consistent experience across online and offline channels help to create loyalty? What have you seen?
Customer experience is the front and center. It's at the core of the businesses in the current time. So just to maybe quick studies, there are about 15% of B2B buyers that we've observed that don't want to speak to a salesperson from a repurchasing or reorder standpoint. We know more than 1/3 of the B2B buyers are digital natives. So experience matters. These are the users that are used to the Amazon-like experience. They want that consistent experience on the front office side of things, as well as a consistent experience in the offline mode, in your brick and mortar, in your stores as well. So to give an example, so we have a customer, Gray Bar, one of the largest customers in the electrical manufacturing and distribution of the networking supplies. This company leveraged our commerce solutions to not only provide the online capability to purchase a product, but also enabled functionality like buy online and pick up in store, or buy online, return in store. But to enable that functionality from a buyer and the end user standpoint, there needs to be consistency not only at the product level, but also at the pricing level, inventory visibility level, and also the aspects of maximizing the profitability. One quick example related is how the businesses are also looking at it is from different dimensions. So for example, historically, while the focus might have been in customer acquisition, and now the focus is also to making sure the profitability aspect. What are the triggers and levers that can be used in that space? Sourcing and optimizing the sourcing aspect is also part of that life cycle from the transaction standpoint. If a company decides that I want to make sure I maximize the usage of our in-house logistics versus leveraging a third-party logistics, they should have that capability baked into that overall capability as well. And from SAP perspective, we offer solutions where we give the power to the businesses to define their business strategy, configure those business strategy, and leveraging those strategies in the sourcing decisions. Is it more profitable to maybe ship it and fulfill the order from the nearby store or from a warehouse which is 50 miles away from you.
Right. Makes sense. A lot of really good operational, opportunities there for companies to drive efficiency. So, well, thank you, Imran. That was really insightful. We appreciate your time and visiting us today. We have to get on to our next topic, but we will see you soon. So, Andy, thank you. Any reactions, Andy, or any thoughts before we move to our next section?
I love just pointing about the reorder replenishment thing and the profitability. That's kind of a win-win-win triangle. Everybody, it's eliminating inefficiency, right? So the customers don't want to talk to a sales rep who they have to pay a commission to. The company has the capability of doing this faster. And the vendor says, we can enable this. So it's like a triangle. It's a success triangle. Why not?
Yeah, it's Amazon subscribe and save for B2B. Right?
Yeah, and I do think this profitability thing is quite real. It's affecting everybody now because this always happens when there's overinvestment in a category, right? Everybody says, wow, just spend, and worry about the numbers later. Well, later has arrived, and now people are worrying about the numbers. And fortunately, that's one of the things that digital does pretty well. It can eliminate a lot of inefficiencies.
Yeah, for sure. And you even see it with Amazon. We'll get to that later. Okay, let's move on to section 2. We're going to talk about the core technology capabilities needed to be that need to be augmented to support growth. Our guest on this topic is Josh Schoonmaker, VP of Product at Optimizely, another fantastic subject matter expert we have joining us. Welcome, Josh, to the webcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I was going to say I'm having a great day, but we can't all be in Vegas at a conference like you are, Brian. So I may just be having an okay day compared to you.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I am, I'm just sitting in a hotel room. It really is a conference. No, but thank you, Josh.
Isn't it funny too that Brian's conferences start in the evening? I don't know how that happens.
Right? Yeah.
My conferences are usually during the day, but I'm sure it's legit.
Oh my goodness.
You're gonna have to really look at that expense report when it comes in for Master B2B on this one.
Oh my goodness. So Josh, and Andy, you mentioned, jump in on some of this stuff, but this is all about technology spending priorities, right? And what are the capabilities needed? But go ahead, Andy.
Yeah. So Josh, I know when we talked earlier about this, you were saying that you're starting to see a trend here as well, which is that companies are being asked to do more with the same or more with less. And instead of going out and replacing and completely wholesale changing their entire infrastructure, which is costly, time consuming, bad, you're saying they're trying to find ways to do more with what they already have. Tell us more about that and how you think you can go shopping in their own closet, so to speak.
Yeah, so I think this comes back to a word that's already come up a number of times on the podcast, the focus on profitability. And I'm going to add another word to that, accountability. So I think part of what's happening here is there was a mad rush to be able to buy technologies. We saw AI suddenly burst in. We had a pandemic, which caused everybody to buy all of this e-commerce stuff. There was this need to react, to move, to get things. Fair enough. But now some years down the line, we're suddenly saying, wait a second, is the ROI panning out on that? Are we using this the way that we really need to? I think you called it out in the beginning with what is old is new again, profitability and retention. We're suddenly saying, how are we actually gauging the investments we made against that profitability or that retention, the wallet share or the customer lifetime value that really impacts and makes that business so much more than it is? So this mode of, hey, the MarTech 5,000 or 10,000 or 20,000, I don't know how far they are on that count now, but just grab some of those things and add it into your stack is really pulling back as people are focusing on, are we getting the most out of what we've already bought? Are we really using the things to make sure that they're returning, not just, oh, look at how cool this is, but is it actually giving us those returns on it? So I think the mindset has shifted and really changed how we focus on what we're getting with technology.
Well, and are you seeing a difference here too in terms of what's driving the decision making, and that it's shifted away from, hey, just buy it because we can and we're going to need it, to more of a focus on KPIs and metrics, deciding what are we going to invest in, what are we going to deprecate. It feels like there's a shift toward metrics. At the same time, there's a shift toward this kind of profitability ROI focus.
I think you're absolutely right on that. And interestingly, that place where we see an increase in the usage of our analytics. We bake analytics into the commerce platform we offer. That's very much something people are using. But I think as we look at that shift away from let's just buy it, I'd like to bring in this idea that in B2B, sexy doesn't have the same kind of oomph it might in B2C, right? In B2C, you're always looking for what's that cutting edge, what's most exciting. And I'm not saying that B2B should ignore it. Like we recently just integrated an LLM into our B2B search engine, so you can ask it natural language. I won't jump into that. I think Sheerine's actually going to get into that topic in a big way. But we, of course, need to be on top of those kind of technological evolutions. But I think what's even more important is you threw a stat out there, 36% of buyers are buying online because they want that faster process. Boom, there is where we've got to put so much focus. And getting a faster process is not necessarily about getting the latest, greatest, most fun thing. It's about how are we decreasing the number of clicks? How are we doing better lists so that people can reorder without having to talk to the sales person? Imran was saying he sees like a third of customers not wanting to do reorders by talking to a salesperson. They might, on that first order, do it to answer questions, but on reorder, they want to touch a button. And so, yeah, here at Optimizely, we've really focused a lot. We've got one customer, for instance, in the pet food arena, distributor for pet food and veterinary supplies, and their focus on cart speed has been amazing. They're literally watching their NPS score change based on the seconds they're cutting out of the cart, because when you put 500 or 700 items in a cart and it takes a second and a half or 2 seconds each, that becomes high consequence. And so the ability to really focus on some of this basic block and tackle stuff that we got used to. I mean, one more example, we had a plumbing distributor, and we're talking about, hey, look at this great, we've got a VMI, we've got mobile app, we've got this great search. And they're like, yeah, but quick order. We're like, quick order, that place where you're just like looking practically at an Excel spreadsheet and typing. They're like, yeah, that's where we really are seeing wins. We're like, really? They're like, yeah, our people have the actual part number or SKU number memorized, and they want to type it, press tab, type a quantity, press tab, and start on the next one. They're like, get the clicks out of the way. Don't even make them touch their mouse. And that's so counterintuitive. When we do our B2C customers at Optimizely, we have such a different conversation about surprise and delight and discovery. But with B2B, there's so much focus on like, how are we actually delivering this in? And speed is a part of it. I'll finish this with also saying, you brought up another stat on why am I going to Amazon? I think it was 24% said it's because it's the easiest to use. And one of the things is it's not always time. There's another element here, which is cognitive load. There's probably a better fair word for this, but make them have to make less decisions or think less when they're putting in their orders. These are professionals. They're ordering 8 hours a day. Right. What they need is to get in and have ease and speed to get there, rather than, wow, I felt so good about that purchase. Like, we want them to feel good, but feel good because they're effective at their job.
That's so well said, Josh. I mean, Brian and I have talked about this before, that B2B buyers are kind of like hunters, not gatherers. You know, they know what they want for the most part, and they're not there to have an experience like they would, say, shopping for clothes or something that they have a passion about. They do it for work, and they want to get in and out quickly. And so on that note, Josh, we want to thank you so much for joining us today. That was a fantastic series of insights that you shared, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you, Josh.
Great. Yeah, no, and I'm excited to hear from Chris next, who is actually a customer who focuses on distribution, could talk about the specifics of this. So thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Josh. You know, Andy, I mean, the theme is so clear, and I put this in my book years ago. It's all about efficiency. Make the buyer's job easier. Exactly the tabbing and, avoiding the clicks. Perfect. We tend to get caught up in the latest shiny object, but at the end of the day, this is really practical. And, Amazon, as Josh was saying, does this so well, and it's easing cognitive dissonance, or whatever he said. That was great.
There's a lot of effort that goes into this. I mean, if you talk to people at Amazon, they will tell you, we spend a lot of time just removing roadblocks along the way, and they're not major trends. It's about just removing friction in the process. But one of my favorite aphorisms, and it's so true, is that it is hard to make things easy.
Yes, right. They say it's easier to write a long book than a short one. I don't know what that means because my book's pretty long, but
that's another webcast.
That's another one. All right, we're going to talk Amazon because Amazon is such a big behemoth now in the B2B sector. Amazon shows that customers prize frictionless buying experience. That's our third section here. 29% of our respondents said they had typically make their work purchases on Amazon. That's higher than brand manufacturer websites or distributor websites. So Amazon is leading the way here, and we have a great guest we're bringing in. This is Chris Beeson. Welcome, Chris, Director of Digital and E-commerce at Bunzl. Chris, you and I, have done a lot of work together on your Amazon program through my firm in Seba, and really excited that you could join us today to talk firsthand about what you're seeing. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So Chris, you and I chatted a bit, ahead of this. Just a couple questions. Would love to get your input on. First, how has the increased prominence of Amazon, an Amazon business now with $40 billion in revenue a year, how has that changed the strategy, your go-to-market strategy at Bunzl?
Yeah, I mean, the rise of Amazon and Amazon Business has certainly impacted our go-to-market strategy. No doubt, Amazon continues to raise the bar in terms of customer expectations.
Yep.
So as Bunzl looks ahead and works to keep pace with the ever-changing, ever-evolving customer expectations, we've made some significant investments in our digital capabilities, starting with our e-commerce platform. So we've selected Optimizely as that platform. And we continue to invest in evolving our website features, functionality, so that we are delivering a best-in-class customer experience. At the end of the day, it's our goal to make it as easy as possible for our customers to do business with us. And we want to meet our customers wherever they are in their digital journey. Beyond e-commerce and our e-commerce platform investments, we are doubling down on product content.
Yeah.
We have resources dedicated to creating best-in-class product content, product data. We've invested in PIM to manage that process, as well as efficiently distribute that product data across the digital shelf. We feel as a manufacturer, it's up to us to really own that. And it's in our best interest to do so. It's going by being able to distribute that content across the digital shelf. It's going to help not only drive consistency for our brand, but also drive discoverability and ultimately sales.
Right, including, of course, on Amazon as a part of that strategy, right?
Absolutely.
So Bunzl, and for those of you who don't know who are listening in, Bunzl is a very large company. You guys are a global, I think, $15-20 billion, both manufacturer and distributor. In fact, I think you started mainly as a distributor out of the UK. Is that accurate, Chris?
I believe so. Don't quote me on that, though.
Yeah. Okay. So Bunzl's a company that has a lot of ways to go to market. And when you think about that, and it's think about one of the key concerns that a lot of companies hear about Amazon is that for its potential to cause channel conflict. So you own these brands, a lot of safety brands. I know that's kind of your part of Bunzl. The company, obviously as a manufacturer of those brands goes to market with traditional distribution, but then you've got Amazon in the mix and you're also a distributor yourself. So how have you approached the challenge of managing channel conflict? And, if some of it is inevitable, to some degree, do the benefits of Amazon outweigh the costs? Could you speak a little bit to channel conflict?
Yeah, absolutely. So channel conflict was certainly a concern early on in our journey. Channel conflict is real. Oftentimes the fear of channel conflict is stronger than the actual reality.
Right.
But what we found was it was super helpful in engaging our customers, being transparent, bringing them in to our Amazon strategy. Listen, Amazon's the number one product search engine. And when we started looking into Amazon, we noticed that we had several of our products already selling on the channel.
Yep.
And half the time we didn't know who these resellers were. Our product content was subpar. The data was inaccurate. Pricing was all over the place. So for us, it was just as much about gaining some control over our brand, on the marketplace as it was about driving brand experience and sales. So again, just bringing our customers into that conversation was helpful in mitigating some of that conflict. The other side of that too is price competition is often driving channel conflict. So having clear pricing policies and online reseller agreements is also very helpful in mitigating some of that conflict.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know that you've experienced some nice growth from the channel, in working directly with you. I guess at the end of the day, we think about the frictionless nature of commerce now. I mean, just maybe could you comment on, what Amazon does well there, and have you learned things for your own e-commerce from that process?
Yeah, I mean, Amazon, just the breadth of their catalog is impressive. It's something that we've been focusing on as well. We want to make sure that we include more of our product assortment across the channel. Obviously, content is a big focus as well. Some of these manufacturers coming overseas have done an incredible job as it relates to the product content, and really is raising the bar there. So that's obviously driven some of the focus internally for our business.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. You and I talk about this, and you consistently see new competitors across all different kinds of industries coming in to compete on Amazon and take advantage of that frictionless experience, because the buyers are now trusting the channel. I think the stat is 65% of buyers trust Amazon, and they'll buy from a brand that they don't ever heard of. 65% of people will do that because they trust the channel, because it's frictionless, because they're Amazon natives. So, well, Chris, this has been really great. Thank you for your insights, and we appreciate you joining us today and spending some time.
Thank you so much.
All right. So, Andy, any thoughts or reactions to what Chris said?
Well, this is like a commercial for your other business and see
Right. Right. Yes. A little self-serving, I know.
Well, no, I mean this honestly, because as Chris just pointed out, selling on Amazon, competing on Amazon, being on Amazon requires product data, pricing data, a whole host of things. You can't just wake up one morning and go, let's sell on Amazon.
Right.
You need to get your ducks in a row. And I think Chris's point was, I think he said it eloquently, we had all these problems. Our brand was a mess. Our product pricing was insufficient. That is a really critical component here. So go in eyes wide open, selling on Amazon, but do so to the extent you can. But you got to have the right data and pricing to make it happen.
Yeah, I think you can leverage those things in other channels too. As you learn from Amazon and as you build that content, you can use it in your own e-commerce. Okay, so next we're going to talk about site search. And site search, folks, is in a state of flux thanks to our friend generative AI. So massive number, 86% of B2B buyers said they would be very or somewhat likely to use ChatGPT on a website to help them find information. So we have a great industry leader here, Sheerine Reid, Director of Product Marketing at Coveo, one of the leading search solutions out there, to comment on this. Welcome, Sheerine.
Hi, thanks for having me. And I'm absolutely happy to weigh in here on one of my favorite topics to talk about.
Sweet. Awesome.
So,
Andy, take it away.
So Sheerine, tell us a little bit about, you said one of the things that frustrates you is that people confuse AI and Gen AI. So why don't you tell us about your take on the difference between those two things?
Sure, no problem. First off, I just want to add, though, that I'm not extremely surprised by the data that you're sharing here, because we've done our own commissioned research and we see similar responses coming directly from consumers. So like 3/4 expect their experiences to evolve with Gen AI. So, it's very much aligned from what you see on the B2B side. So happy to add that in. So we need to kind of take a step back and really look at AI and Gen AI, because you really can't use them interchangeably. And I want to avoid confusion. So when we talk about AI being used in product discovery, it's not new, right? It's been around for a long time. We've all experienced it. We go to a site and we type in that search box, we get suggestions that pop up. That's machine learning, part of AI. When you have results page and they're all ranked in a certain relevance order, as they call it, that's machine learning working in the background. If you're on a product detail page or you add something to your cart and you get recommendations, based on a whole bunch of algorithmic models behind the scenes that are looking at what you're doing on the site, what you've selected, and then are recommending other products. So putting that into, the AI bucket, if we want to look at now Gen AI and what everybody has gotten excited about, which is a little bit different in the last year or so, it's around breakthroughs in really the context of large language models. And so the ability to not only understand a natural language question, like the long question that you put in the search box, not like 2 or 3 words, but also to be able to generate a fairly on-point response and one that's kind of human-like, right? And of course, it's cool to no longer just be given, let's say, a document or an extract from a document, but it actually creates content, right, in the form of text or images or videos. And people are excited, I think, about this because they probably already experimented firsthand with ChatGPT, and they see the potential there, right? So I think that's what I want to highlight in terms of the difference between AI and Gen AI. Do we want to dive into maybe where we think that there's value in B2B now?
Well, I want to ask you one question before that. I used a term when we talked before that I really like called the intent box. You said it's really not the search box anymore, it's the intent box. Can you share with us what you mean by that?
Yeah, sure. So search isn't going away. It's becoming that when you go to a site, it's almost there. It's the only place that you can actually capture what a person's looking for, right? Because they're letting you know right then and there. Am I looking for, a size 12 safety boot? If you take an example of Chris that was just on the call before, or do I want to know, how does thickness matter when it comes to safety gloves? Like that, those are 2 very different intents. And you want to be able to respond to them adequately in both scenarios. One is more asking, expects more of a product kind of experience where you're going to see products, maybe get some relevant faceting or filtering going on there, automatically show me, size 10. And then the other one is more like an answer or a question around what the product attributes are and what I need to look for. Yeah.
So you're saying that AI and Gen AI really serve different functions at different places in the buyer journey. So there's the browsing sort of education phase, and then there's, of course, the buying phase. And you're saying that there are roles that, say, Gen AI can play at various points along the way. Do you want to share a few examples or tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it picks up on the theme again that we were all just discussing around efficiency and getting to what you need as quickly as possible, right? So if you have a returning customer, for example, that they simply want to reorder, or they have a specific part number, they want to enter it into the search box, they want to get the right product suggested to them with also, the availabilities and probably their own specific custom pricing displayed right there. They want to add to cart and get on with their day. Gen AI, maybe not so helpful in that scenario. Do you really want to put a chatbot in front of that person and have them enter a question and then wait to get some kind of generated answer? Probably not, because you're going to aggravate them, right? More than anything. However, on the other end of the spectrum, if you have a new customer, or maybe, a current customer, even so, but it's coming to your site to do research. So they need to understand information about those products. That's an opportunity for Gen AI, right? And it's also, I think, a big opportunity to differentiate versus your competitors. If you're able to offer that education, because now you have a captive audience there that's not only looking for education, but probably then looking to buy right after they are informed. Caveat, of course, is that you have to have the content, not just the product content, but the educational type content that can be leveraged to answer those questions. So things like, product guides, articles, how-to videos, might even have, spec documents. All of these can be used to generate answers that are specific to your business and to your products. And it goes beyond that. So we've talked about maybe education, purchase, but there's support. That's a big part of that journey as well, right? Post-purchase support. And that's where we've already seen value from our customers that have deployed this. So you take a case in point, one of our customers, Zero, that I can share, like they 20% less case submitted just by offering up generated answers versus just, a snippet of a specific document or a link to a document where you can go and look for the answer yourself.
Sheerine, is that within the search box? Is that actually within the, should I say
Yes.
intent box?
It's more of an intent box because you enter what you want, it generates the answer, but it also has citations where you can go and verify those answers, and it also has the search results below it, and it also has your filtering and facets, which is important because maybe it's a specific context you want to apply or filter the information out. So that's really important too when deploying something like this.
Well, I think you make an excellent point about the role of Gen AI. It feels to me a bit like search is sort of like getting an answer. Gen AI is about more having a conversation. Sometimes you want to get an answer and you don't want a conversation. Sometimes you want a conversation and hope to get an answer. I think there's a role for both. But hey, Sheerine, thanks so much for joining us today. Fantastic conversation. And look forward to talking to you again here soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Awesome. Andy, again, the theme of making the buyer's job easier carries through here. And to me, it's not an either or, right? It's not, is Chat GPT going to replace site search, right? It's really, as Sheerine just mentioned, it's a convergence of these things, and it's using the tools together. And I like the way you characterized it with conversation versus, versus intent to buy or find something specific. It's great. I loved intent box. That's great.
I hadn't heard that before, and Sheerine brought that one up. I'm like, that's a good way to phrase it because, and in fact, I always thought search was kind of the wrong word because I don't want to search, I want to find.
Right.
But find never caught on, and I heard people talking about findability, that people still toss that term around, but for some reason, search stuck. But I do think this Gen AI thing maybe shifts it a bit.
Yep.
But yeah, I think she makes a great point about the intent. That's really what you're there to measure.
That's right. Well, we got a couple more things we want to cover, folks. A couple other sections we want to talk through. And so Andy and I are going to keep driving through some of this. So let's go ahead and bring up the next slide and talk about, some of today's, the metrics and some other things. So buyer experience drives everything. Expectations continue to rise. I've been saying, for years, Andy, I mentioned age of transparency. It's here. And our results show this, greater than ever. I mean, for example, displaying prices has an impact on conversion rate. 62% of buyers say their companies are asking them to move, these lower consideration replenishment orders to the online channel. So we've got, the nuts and bolts, and frankly, a lot of B2B companies still don't have that right.
Well, I love that stat you just shared, and we didn't share it earlier, so I'm glad you brought it up about the 62%. Asking them to shift to another channel because, for lower consideration replenishment and reorder stuff, you don't need all the bells and whistles. And to Sheerine's point earlier, you may just not even want to, you want a frictionless path to an answer. And I think what we've learned, and it varies from industry to industry, but in some industries, the replenishment numbers are pretty high as a percentage of the total volume of sales they do.
Yep.
In other industries, it's lower. So it's got to be circumstantial here. But if you're in an industry where there's a high percentage of replacement and reorder volume business, all that stuff needs to be coming through the online channel. I can't tell you how many times I've heard when I did the Death of a B2B Salesman research, I heard companies say, no, we want them to talk to our sales reps when they're reordering and doing replenishment stuff. And because that touch is what separates us. And I'm like, have you ever asked the customers whether they care about that?
That's right. That's exactly right. All right. So this next one here is, great point. You and I, Andy, we sit here in amazement and disbelief at the number of brand manufacturers, if you just go back a little bit there, Gabe, to what we were just talking about, that will not come to grips with their channel conflict concerns. Manufacturers, the customer doesn't care. Manufacturers need to accommodate that, and distributors, they need to accommodate the buyer's need. They don't care about your channel conflict. They're foregoing incremental revenue by not moving beyond this. We moved beyond this in B2C ages ago. If you were selling a shirt or footwear or fashion apparel, you'd expect as a retailer, and I worked in retail, we're talking about 20 years ago at PacSun almost, we would expect our brands to be selling online. We would expect them to. If they weren't, we didn't even carry the brand because they weren't doing a good enough job being present in the market. It's here in B2B. Manufacturers have to be selling, and moving beyond these concerns. What do you think, Andy?
It's a multidimensional problem. There's no easy answer to it. It's as much will as it is anything else. But, I've written about this extensively. My research, A Brand New Day in B2B, talked about this. The big insight to me about this was that the manufacturers have been forfeiting up. They've been opportunity cost is missed here because we know that distributors and the channel specialize in selling and servicing products. And for brand manufacturers, traditionally, that has always worked. Great.
Right.
That's not in threat here. What is a threat, though, is when you do a Google search or you go to Amazon and you type in the name of a product, what do you expect to see other than a site or the brand itself?
Right.
So this is where the conflict begins, which is, if I'm searching for a brand, why would I go to a channel site? I would, in fact, especially if I want to learn more about the product. So this puts a new burden on brand manufacturers that many of them I don't think have sort of rationalized yet. They still think of it in terms of we make, they sell. But what upended the whole process was the interactivity of the web.
Right.
When I start searching for a brand, because I know the brand, I kind of expect to go see a brand. And so the brands are the ones that have to step up here that have been reluctant to do so. Amazon has kind of wedged itself in the middle here because Amazon has now said, we'll be your distributor. So it's increased the channel conflict, but brands have got to sell some of this stuff direct because they're creating a bad experience if they don't.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think brands have to, for example, make sure they're represented on these channels because I always say manufacturers can't control and shouldn't try to control the channel preferences of the B2B buyer. Stop it. Just accommodate where they want to shop, look, buy, research, et cetera. Okay, we have two more to cover here quickly, Andy, for the sake of time. Cross-channel metrics, listen, they matter and the metrics are falling short on capturing ROI because it is cross-channel, right? The influence between online and offline, we cited it earlier. B2B leaders, they have to be working with their finance teams to be able to measure this in a meaningful way. And so we talked about this earlier. And then the last one,
Let me throw a stat. Two quick
go ahead,
stats.
throw a stat out. Go ahead.
I'm a stats guy. So 54% of B2B buyers research half or more of their purchases online before buying offline. Okay.
Right. Yeah,
that
makes sense.
kind of stands to reason. It's easy. People are doing it. 27% of B2B buyers research half or more of their purchases offline before then buying online. Wow. That is something that I guarantee you the vast majority of people do not expect or understand or appreciate. So you know what? If you disconnect, separate these channels, do so at your own peril, because that statistic actually proves that they are interconnected.
Yeah, no question. So this is a tough one. And I know we talk a lot about these at our roundtables and our summit and such, that cross-channel attribution thing. So ongoing, and I think it's going to continue to be a theme. And the last, of course, of our categories is salespeople. Hey, they never left, but the role has changed. 41% of buyers say they prefer not to interact with a sales representative. Imran shared some other good stats earlier in our conversation. AI chatbots are playing a role here, as we just talked about. So any final thoughts on this one, Andy?
Well, it's always been a complex picture. And in fact, what we've seen pretty consistently is that some percent of the people want to talk to salespeople even more, probably a highly considered purchase. And by the way, those salespeople are now armed. They're enabled with technology. So you're not just talking to Bob, the sales guy. You're talking to Bob, the sales guy, with an army of information or information resources behind him, including things that can help you size, fit, price, et cetera. So it's a digitally enabled version of a sales rep at a minimum. But we still continue to see, especially younger generations, who don't want to talk to sales reps at all under any circumstances because they don't want to talk on the phone. 68% want to gather information on their own before talking or interacting with a sales rep. So they're starting their research on their own. And depending on the quality of the resources, they can always end that on their own too. Yes. So there is a role for the sales rep. Again, that's why we said the role has shifted. Maybe it's a little bit more down funnel now. Yeah. Hey, before I make that purchase, I want to just gut check it with somebody. Or hey, I did some research, but there are some pieces that are missing. But the role of the rep used to be the primary source, the first source. Now it's a role that fits in at various points along the customer journey, which is a different role.
No question. All right. Well, folks, those are our observations, and you can download the report. The 2024 State of B2B e-commerce is available on our website, masterb2b.com/2024 State of E-commerce report. Put a dash in between each of those words, and you'll get to our report. It is free. Thank you again to our sponsors, Optimizely, Coveo, and SAP, who partnered with us in this. And we're guests here today that they all did a fabulous job, along with Chris from Bunzel. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Any other final comments, Andy, before we wrap for the day?
Love doing this State of B2B e-commerce report and generating the insights. It was helpful to remind ourselves this world we live in. And this is a rapidly changing but massive B2B market that is got some people who are very far along and some people who are not quite so far along. And we love helping both. So great to be here again.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We'll see you next time.